Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lions Den with another news and commentary. I'm doing this story because I want you guys to take a listen to this. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell sit down with Emmanuel Acho. He did an interview called Uncomfortable Conversations of a Black Man. And he's going to explain to you a lot of stuff that's going on with the Colin Kaepernick situation, what he's been through when he was growing up. And I want you guys to take a listen to this. But then I'm going to put my 2 cents in on why I don't believe what Roger Goodell is saying or what the NFL is saying. So let's go ahead and play this interview. And I'm just going to do a part two interview because it's only a part one with this video, but I'm also going to do a part two coming up as well. So remember, this is going to talk about this interview. They're going to talk about, he's marching with, his Roger Goodell's father, Coretta Scott King, and everything, being involved with the civil rights movement. And then later on in the interview, he's going to talk about the Colin Kaepernick situation. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go ahead and play this, and then I'm going to continue the rest of my commentary.
Welcome to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Just a few years ago, the injustices in our world were brought to the forefront of our eyes by athletes across major sports. Well, no sport bigger than the NFL, which has been said to own one day of the week. I'm joined now by Commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Emmanuel. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Glad to be here.
Great. Good to see you. You're one of the busiest men in America. You could be anywhere, but you know the nature of these conversations and have chosen to be here. Why?
Well, I've seen a few of your past episodes, and I'm a big believer in dialogue. And frankly, I talk to my kids all the time and others about you really don't learn until you're uncomfortable. and really, when you get uncomfortable, it forces you to resort to something you're not comfortable with, mm-hmm. right? And it gives you an opportunity to learn. Mm-hmm. So I always look at things as an experience to learn. I think I teased you. You're probably going to have a hard time making me uncomfortable, which is a challenge, and I probably shouldn't have said it, because I'm very comfortable talking about race.
Yeah,
I have all my life.
You told me when we spoke on the phone, you said, Emmanuel, I remember in elementary school, kids were being bussed into my school. Take me back there. Elaborate on that.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I grew up in the 60s, so that's how old I am, Emmanuel. So you can't relate to that one. But I went to public school mm-hmm. in Washington, D.C., right in the city. My dad was in politics, so we lived there from 59, right after I was born, until 1970. But the 60s were a really volatile time.
Yeah.
We had not only civil rights, but we had, Vietnam War was a terribly divisive issue too. And so being in Washington, it wasn't unusual for me to walk home and the National Guard was on the street corner. And I really didn't think much about it.
Again, I was doing my research and I came across this picture. Who are those two people in the center of that photo right there?
Well, I can tell you all three of them.
Okay.
So this is Coretta Scott King, George McGovern.
Okay.
And that is my father. And
what's going on there?
They are marching in the Vietnam War rally. And the interesting story about that is Coretta Scott King, she didn't want to march without my father.
Please elaborate on that.
She actually, this is how it was told to me, and as I understand it, she said, I want Charlie Goodell to walk with me because he stood up to the Vietnam War. Obviously, I look at that and I have a tremendous pride. We actually have that in our family house on the wall when you walk in. My dad actually, when he spoke up against the Vietnam War, he originally supported the Vietnam War mm-hmm. as a politician. He changed his mind actually by going to various colleges around the state of New York, which he represented, and he listened to the kids.
Yeah.
And he listened to the students who were being drafted, by the way, mm-hmm. and going off to this tragic war. And so he was really influenced by that and said, he came back and he sat us all down as a family and said, I made a decision that I'm going to oppose the Vietnam War. It will not be popular with the President of the United States, Richard Nixon, and I will likely not win my re-election for the Senate, but it's the right thing to do. And so he turned out to be right on the fact he wouldn't win re-election because the president and the vice president just ripped him. and just, he didn't have a chance. And, but he stood up for what he believes. It's not always easy to know what's right, but you have to, when you do know what's right, you have to have the courage to do it.
What do you know now in 2020? What does Roger Goodell know now about the protest that took place during the national anthem, the peaceful protest that you wish you knew back then?
Just what was going on in the communities. I didn't know what was going on in the communities. And when I had the chance to sit with our players, I never had the chance to sit with Cap, but I talked with Kenny Stills a lot. Eric Reed, Malcolm Jenkins, Anquan Bolden, so many other players that, some of them sacrificed a great deal.
You can't understate how valuable the message that you put out a couple months was. At least as a former player, as a black man in society, that message, it resonated with me. It spoke to me. You said you listened, you heard, you learned. You even apologized to so many. But in the midst of all that, there wasn't a specific message or apology to the catalyst for it all, Kaepernick, who you mentioned. If you were to publicly express your remorse, apologize to Kaepernick, what would you say?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I wish we had listened earlier, Cap, to what you were kneeling about and what you were.
I'm going to stop you right there, y'all. And the reason why I'm stopping you right there, because Roger Goodell said, quote, I should listen to Colin Kaepernick. But yet, Colin Kaepernick is still not in the NFL roster. He wasn't even called for a workout or even in training camp. And there's so many NFL players they brought in that's worse than Kaepernick. So what Roger Goodell said about, he should have listened to Kaepernick, but the thing of it is that he's still not in the NFL roster. Let's continue, y'all.
Trying to bring attention to. We had invited him in several times to have the conversation, to have the dialogue. I wish we had the benefit of that.
Yeah.
We never did.
Why? Why you never did? Oh, that's right, because the NFL owners refused to even talk to Kaepernick. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, all this, fighting racism and social injustice in this country, y'all, it shows you that Roger Goodell and the NFL aren't that serious about what's going on. And the thing of it is that now on week 1, they're going to play Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem. They even want NFL players to want to take a knee in support of, fighting racism and social and fighting racial injustice. But ladies and gentlemen, Roger Goodell, not one time, didn't even talk with Colin Kaepernick. Not one time the NFL owners didn't even talk with Colin Kaepernick. So all the stuff he said in this interview so far, y'all, he's lying to you. Let's continue.
We would have benefited from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, because I've known for years now that the peaceful protest during the national anthem, it was never about the flag. To the point where I just want to rip out my hair sometimes and say it's not about the flag.
Right.
If you were to be able to relay that message, what would you say? Like, to people who still think it's about the flag, what would you tell them?
It is not about the flag. The message here, what our players are doing, is being mischaracterized. These are not people who are unpatriotic.
Yeah.
They're not disloyal. They're not against our military.
Yeah.
In fact, many of those guys were in the military.
Yeah.
And they were our military family. What they were trying to do is exercise their right to bring attention to something that needs to get fixed. And that misrepresentation of who they were and what they were doing was the thing that really gnawed at me.
Our nation has gone through an incredibly tumultuous, just to a degree, trying and depressing time for a lot of people, especially after seeing and witnessing the murder of George Floyd on camera. What was the most valuable lesson you learned about yourself in these last 4 or 5 months, specifically after witnessing that, along with so many other injustices?
Well, it was horrific to see that play out on the screen. There was a part of me that said, I hope people realize that's what the players were protesting. And That's what's been going on in our communities. You see it now on television, but that's been going on for a long, long time. And that's where we should have listened sooner.
Yeah.
And we should have been in there with them, understanding it and figuring out what we can do as the NFL. We can't solve all problems.
Mm-hmm.
We can't.
Yeah.
But we're big in our communities. We have a platform. We have an opportunity. And we're using that effectively now. I wish we could have been doing it earlier.
What was the moment, because I've had my own, what was the moment when you realized, wait a second, that's why players are protesting? Was there a specific incident? Was there a specific tragedy where you, Roger Goodell, said, that's it, I get it now?
Well, I would say this. When I listened to them, I heard it. And I'll try to make that distinction. I heard it, and I believed it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go and you sit in one of those bail hearings, or you go on the ride-along and you see people who are mad, you go talk to a parent who's lost their child because of police brutality, it's better than hearing. You feel it, you know it, and you see it. And that, when that happens,
Did it change you?
It's really powerful. It helped me understand better. And, you know, people can hear it, but they're not connected to it. I never experienced it. I never experienced domestic violence in my life. But when I went to call centers and I listened to victims and heard what they were saying and what they were going through, and you could hear the fear in their voice, yeah, it changes you. Yeah, you feel that deeply.
There's nothing more peaceful than bowing one's head and taking a knee. We've seen other sports now do it. Will you support players if they were to peacefully protest during the national anthem this season?
Okay, y'all, that's part one of this interview. I'm going to say something like this. If Roger Goodell is serious at what he says, then why is Colin Kaepernick signed to an NFL team? Now, I've been hearing that, well, we should have listened to Kaepernick before when he took a knee and fight racial injustice and police brutality. But this week is the start of an NFL season, and Colin Kaepernick hasn't been signed yet. And it's like, on week one of this game, ladies and gentlemen, Roger Goodell said, tell the players, if you want to take a knee, you know, to fight racial injustice and police brutality, you can. And we will play the Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. But they're not doing the right thing in signing Colin Kaepernick to an NFL roster. So this is disturbing, ladies and gentlemen. And that's like I told y'all before. I don't even believe what this man is saying, obviously. Yeah, his dad walking with Coretta Scott King and protesting against the war in Vietnam, and it's all good that he's doing all of that. But he's not doing. See, the commissioner's supposed to be powerful enough to demand owners to sign any player. But yeah, he said, well, it's up to the NFL clubs. But realistically, he really didn't want to say, ladies and gentlemen, it's up to the NFL owners because that's his bosses, right? But yet he said, well, it's up to the NFL clubs. So to me, ladies and gentlemen, you know, Roger Goodell he basically should have done some things and not blackball Colin Kaepernick. As you can see, he's still blackballed to this day, y'all. He's still blackballed to this day. And not one NFL team give him a call. There's a trial here and there, but not a phone call for him to come into their facility or the training camp. So you see the blackball continues. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and do a part 2 of this interview with Emmanuel Acho and NFL Roger Goodell. And so y'all let me know what you think about this so far. Like, click, subscribe, and remember to click the notification bell for all the news and commentary. With that being said, this is Lions Den signing off. Deuces.